Yeah, welcome everyone. It's lovely to see your names and faces. And I know a few people can't come, so are hoping for the recording. But I would love you to, if you're able to write in the chat, just how your full moon was for you last week, the full moon, blue moon, super moon, because we all have our different experiences, whether there was anything significant, whether it felt any different, whether there was any heightened energies of highs and lows, or how you are today. Just because it's lovely for me to also have your voices and your input into this. And as I mentioned last week, I was down in St. Francis Bay with my mum and dad, and my aunt and uncle lived next door there. So we saw Ellen and Richard. And we'd seen these two huge porcupines running along the rocks on the beach just the night before, which felt quite astounding. And then after our lovely mindful moment, we just walked outside onto the lawn, and their places are right on the sea. And there was this huge school of dolphins just playing around in the waves and jumping through the waves. And it was so amazing. It just felt like they'd been summoned by the beautiful energy we'd created, because Mum and Ellen hadn't seen the dolphins for quite a long time. And so it was just so lovely. And they almost stopped in front of us and played around in front of us. So yeah, the blue moon is often too much. It's we had a lot of highs and a lot of lows last month. We had, I think I mentioned last week deaths of two good friends of ours who were youngish men, well, in their 50s and with young families, and then we had other things that were so full of joy, and so we had both as well. So yeah, it can be very overwhelming. And yeah, and it's like this giant spotlight that just illuminates everything, and sometimes there's too much to look at. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in due course, but thank you for putting stuff in, and if anyone would like to add, it's lovely to have that. So last night we had a lovely call for our spring shed, which is launching. The doors close this Friday night, and we start on Monday. And I started the call with this poem, A Hopi Elder Speaks, which I'm going to read first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about in a moment. So if you just invite you, as I did last night, just to pause for a moment and just to take a breath in. And as you breathe out, just letting your energy settle, following your breath, and letting your energy settle in your feet. Taking another breath in, and as you breathe out, just following the breath, noticing your seat, settling into your seat. And then encouraging you to uncurl out of your pelvis, straighten your spine, lift your head and neck and shoulders up to the sky, so that you invite a feeling of openness, expansiveness, of upright dignity as we listen to this poem. You've been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour, that there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other, and do not look outside yourself for the leader. Then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, "This could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time for the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So I read this because it's such a basis for the spring shed. And life is always going to be busy. There's always going to be stuff going on. There's never a perfect time, and seldom even a good time to do something like the spring shed, or even to do the things that we are wanting to do for ourselves. And there are always going to be these highs and lows, and work is always going to be there. And then we go on holiday and we have a lovely break, and then we come back from holiday, and then work is even more intense. And it's up to us to navigate our way through this all. There's no one coming to save us. There's no magic pill, and there's no one getting it right. We're all in this river together, and it's now how we choose how we're going to navigate this river and how we're going to move through it all. Is it going to be with fear and self-judgment, self-loathing, holding on too tight, scared to show ourselves and never getting it sort of right, always feeling not good enough, which are all very easy paths to go down? Or are we going to navigate our river with flow and understanding how our bodies and minds work and how they work best, and learning how to navigate and regulate them better? So in the spring shed, we're going to be looking at our blood sugar levels and our energy levels, also noticing what we're putting in our bodies and the effects on our bodies, noticing how even if we're having sugar spikes, how it can be so related to emotional spikes. And we see this so much in young children, and yet we don't really realize that it carries through to ourselves as adults too, that we're so affected by what we put in on our body. And then we're also going to be looking a lot at emotional regulation tools, which is what we do here on our Mindful Moments each week, learning how to drop into our heart space, learning how to create heart coherence, heart and body coherence. And last night I mentioned a podcast by Jay Shetty. He's got his podcast called On Purpose, and he was interviewing Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I've been listening to it. It's a long podcast, so I still am not even at the end, but I've been listening to it over time. And for those who don't know Dr. Joe Dispenza, he was in a terrible bicycle accident. He was doing a triathlon or something like that in his 20s. He trained as a doctor. He is a doctor, a medical doctor. And he had this terrible bike accident, and he was paralyzed almost from the neck down. And he spent a very long time in hospital and was told he was never going to walk again, and many things like that. And he actually, through a whole process of a lot of meditation and visualizations and consciousness of what he was putting on in his body, he actually did heal himself. And now he is amazing. He does these incredible retreats around the world. People come with all sorts of conditions. There's incredible healings. The testimonials on his website are astounding. It really is incredible. And the podcast and his discussion with Jay Shetty really focused a lot on the technique of dropping into heart coherence as a way of regulating our emotions and creating this feeling in our bodies of what we want to feel before we're there. So he deals a lot with people who are very sick, have chronic disease, have cancers, very terrible illness and disease, and want to heal. And so he helps to create them. Janine, I'll just remind me at the end, and I'll actually post it in this chat, and I can also post it on some of our groups. So and he talks about this heart coherent practice, and what they also practice in their retreats is they do them as 1 or 2 minute practices, 5-minute practices, 30-minute practices, a walking meditation, because you want to be able to access this even when you're out and about, when your eyes are open, when you're walking. And this is exactly what we're doing here. This is exactly what we've been doing, is heart coherence. And now we're going to even be more conscious about it. And in the shade, we're going to bring in a lot of this and shorter little versions of it. And now in these practices, what I want to also do is bring in a little bit more visualization of how we want to be, how we want to feel, feeling as if it's already here, and doing more of that. So it's exactly what we've been doing, but it's an extension of it. Because as we've heard, must be thousands of times in our lives, our thoughts create our reality. But now we really do need to harness the superpower and decide where we're going to put our thoughts and attention and how we're going to regulate our emotions. So we're going to just settle into our meditation. I encourage you to, again, just take a few deep breaths, either closing your eyes or just dropping your gaze. Taking a breath in through your nose, noticing the air on your nostrils, following it as it moves through the back of your throat, following it as it sinks into your body, and then following it as it is released from your body again. With each breath, inviting a feeling of settling into your feet, settling into your seat, settling into your body. And if your mind starts to wander, just bringing them back to your breath. Following each breath with curious attention, as if it's the first time you've really noticed your breath. And then bringing your attention to your heart space, your heart that rests nestled in your lung space, surrounded by your ribs. Feeling into this whole space, noticing the strength and protection of the ribs and the softness but power of the lungs and heart beneath. Sensing into the rhythm of expansion and contraction. Of giving and receiving. And noticing whether your heart space has a shape or a color. Sometimes it feels heavy and dark, sometimes more spacious and light. Just noticing what's here this morning. And then, no matter what we find there, inviting now a sensation of gratitude to this heart space. Perhaps gratitude for this moment, gratitude for a pet or an animal that you may love unconditionally. Perhaps gratitude for a place where you feel safe and secure, or a person where you feel safe and loved. Letting go of the image, but just inviting a sensation of gratitude into your heart space. If your thoughts start to wander, just bringing them back to the breath, breathing rhythmically in and out, and to the sensation of gratitude in your heart space. And then inviting an image of yourself and how you would like to be, how you would like to feel. Perhaps feeling whole, healed, however that may look. Perhaps feeling light, confident, feeling in flow. If there's something that you'd like to have healed, just visualizing that whole and healed. And for the next few minutes, just inviting this image while keeping a feeling of gratitude in our heart space. And if we lose this image or our minds start to take over, just coming back without thinking, without berating, just coming back to the heart space, into the image, into the gratitude. Sensing gratitude that it is already there, you're already feeling it. You can hold the image of it in your mind and in your heart space. And if it's something that you long for, a different career, a different focus in life, inviting that image too. How would it look and how would it feel if that was already here? And gently letting go of this image as we would let go of a balloon and allow it to drift up without attachment, but holding on to the feeling of gratitude and lightness in our bodies and just allowing that to expand through our bodies. As the blood moves from our heart space out into our abdomen, our chest, our shoulders, and out to our extremities, and then right into our fingers and toes, our eyes, our ears. So allowing this feeling of lightness, gratitude to expand. so that it fills our whole bodies. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. Time for the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And so now taking a few deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose and mouth. As we return from this meditation back into our room, back into the space, and carrying this sensation with us as we can, and knowing it's always here for us to return to, that we are in practice and in training, but the more we do it and the more often we return to it, the easier it becomes. And so in moments of dysregulation, when we are rushing, feeling stressed, overwhelmed, perhaps just resting our hearts, our hands on our heart spaces, taking a few breaths and coming back to this sensation, inviting it back, the gratitude and the image. And as Joe Dispenza says in this podcast, it's like riding a bicycle, because we are going to fall off. And by just practicing this now, just for a short time, doesn't mean that we've got it, that we're perfect, that we should have it. It's like riding a bicycle. We're going to fall off. But no one ever asks when you are learning to ride a bicycle how many times you fell off, or once you're riding a bicycle. So we just get back on and get back on and get back on and do short practices and long practices. And so I wish you a blessed week. I hope you might think of joining us in the spring shed. I'm going to be doing a shortened meditation of this as well, that's more bite-sized. And then we'll do more expanded ones. And then I look forward to seeing you next week. Let me find that podcast so I can put it in the chat, but you're welcome to unmute and give any feedback or write anything in the chat. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, love.
It was lovely. Thanks, Mum. Okay, so this is the link to the podcast I'm going to just send. I don't know whether it's taking it from 1 hour 19, which is where I'm up to, but if it is, then just rewind and start from the beginning. It's called Joe Dispenza on why stress and overthinking. I can't see what the rest of it says. Why? Why? Yeah. How to? I'll have to look it up. Thank you, Sal. Thanks, Joe. How to change your habits on autopilot. It's a lot about that, but it really does inspire us to keep going with our practice and to keep going with this sort of thing. Why stress and overthinking negatively impacts your brain and heart, and how to change your habits on autopilot. That's what it's called. And I'd be happy to put it in any chat if you ask me on the chat. So thank you all. Wishing you a blessed day.
And I love the supermoon. It filled me with energy and healing is how I felt, because I went for my mammogram that morning afterwards to be told I'm completely clear. And I felt I'd been soaked with that moon,
with all the beautiful moonlight.
Yes, I stood outside a long time.
Oh, how beautiful. Thank you.
Special.
Yeah. And you know, they say that moon bathing, spending time under a moon is so good for us and so good for our body rhythms and body cycles and things. So it's something that we should, it's lovely to do more of. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for this morning. Thank you.
Love you. See you.
Bye, everybody.
I hope your gardener can't come again.
Me too. He's going on leave, so few
okay,
times.
do something else to get started so then you can see him afterwards, because it's so lovely to have you.
Okay. Lovely, Nikki. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.